Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Those words have a way of lingering in your mind, don't they? We hear them tossed around casually, but every so often, they're the perfect prelude to something that leaves you questioning reality itself. Welcome to Truth, Stranger Than Fiction, a series that dives into the weird, the uncanny, and the downright unbelievable. Over the course of 3 stories, you'll encounter events that defy logic, tales that make you raise an eyebrow, and moments so peculiar you'll wonder if someone slipped fiction into reality. If you've ever felt drawn to the strange corners of life, the dark, the mysterious, and the stories that make you shiver or laugh in disbelief, then you're in the right place. And don't worry, we won't just leave you hanging on the eerie side. There's always room for a quirky human moment, a smirk or a shake of the head at life's absurdity. After all, truth has a way of being oddly funny sometimes. So buckle up and make sure to subscribe and follow along. New episodes drop every week. You won't want to miss what reality has in store, because sometimes the truth is far stranger than anything your imagination could conjure. And with that, let's step into the first story, June 29th, 1934. The sun hung low over El Paso, Texas, casting long shadows across the dusty streets. Captain Alan Falby, a 37-year-old police officer, tightened his grip on the handlebars of his motorcycle. His eyes locked on the pickup truck, weaving recklessly through traffic. The roar of the engine, the scent of burning rubber, and the blur of motion around him did nothing to shake his focus. Falby had faced dangerous chases before, but something about this one felt different, tense, almost electric. Every twist and turn of the truck through the streets of El Paso was met with the precision of a man trained to anticipate chaos. His mind racing ahead, calculating, reacting. The city around him faded into motion, street vendors jumping aside, pedestrians frozen in awe and fear, and other vehicles scattering to make way. It wasn't just a pursuit, it was a life-or-death ballet, with Falby determined not to let the reckless driver escape, and not a single second to lose. The roar of the engine, the rush of wind against his helmet, and the blur of the El Paso streets were all Captain Alan Falby knew in that fleeting moment. Then, without warning, the reckless pickup truck he had been chasing slammed its brakes. Falby had no time to react. His motorcycle skidded violently on the hot pavement, metal screeching and rubber scraping as it collided with the truck's rear. Pain exploded through his legs like fire. Every nerve seemed alight. Every breath was a battle. He tried to move, tried to push himself up, but the weight of the motorcycle pinned him down mercilessly. The world narrowed to the relentless ache in his body and the terrifying realization that he was utterly alone on that deserted stretch of road. The sounds of distant traffic and the faint cries of startled pedestrians barely pierced the fog of agony and fear enveloping him. Helplessness settled in as Falby felt the crushing reality he might not make it through this. Every second stretched into an eternity, each one a battle against the terror that gripped him. And in that suspended moment between life and what might come next, the ordinary world faded, leaving only pain, fear, and the desperate hope that someone, anyone, might appear before it was too late. As the haze of pain threatened to swallow him whole, Falby barely noticed the approaching figures. 2 men appeared on the roadside, their faces etched with concern and determination. Without hesitation, they rushed to his side, lifting the weight of the motorcycle enough to free him from its crushing grip. One of them, thinking quickly, tore off his necktie and wrapped it tightly around Falby's mangled leg, fashioning an improvised tourniquet. A sturdy stick was wedged through the knot, giving them the leverage to tighten it further. Blood still seeped, but the relentless flow had slowed, buying precious time. Falby's mind, foggy with pain, clung to the realization that someone, strangers yet heroes, had arrived just in time. Paramedics soon arrived and rushed him to the hospital. Doctors worked frantically, confirming what Falby had suspected in his fading consciousness. He had been mere minutes from death. The improvised tourniquet had saved his life, transforming what could have been a tragedy into a story of courage, quick thinking, and the strange. life-altering coincidences that make reality far stranger than fiction. 4 years had passed since that fateful day on the streets of El Paso. It was December 12th, 1938, and Captain Alan Falby, now a seasoned officer, was back on duty. The winter air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of smoke and asphalt, when a call crackled over the radio. Another accident. Rushing to the scene, Falby found a man lying on the pavement, his leg grotesquely twisted, blood pooling around him. Instinct took over. Without a second thought, he tore his own tie from around his neck, looping it with practiced precision around the injured limb. He wedged a stick, twisting it tightly, just as someone had done for him years ago. As the man groaned, Falby looked up, and recognition struck like lightning. The victim's eyes met his, wide with disbelief. Alfred Smith, the very man who had saved Falby's life in 1934, lay before him, helpless and trusting. A wry smile crossed Falby's face despite the tension. "One good tourniquet deserves another," he said, echoing the bond forged in blood and bravery years earlier. Life has a peculiar way of weaving threads together, often in patterns invisible until the moment they snap into view. Falby and Smith's story is more than coincidence. It is a testament to the strange, poetic symmetry of existence. Courage begets courage. A life saved can ripple forward, returning unexpectedly in moments of need. In that brief, harrowing exchange, the past and present collided, leaving an indelible reminder. The world is often stranger than fiction, and kindness, like a carefully applied tourniquet, can hold the fragile threads of life together when it matters most. Now let's move to story 2. The Elevator Murder, December 16th, 1984, Hong Kong. The neon glow of the city reflected off the wet streets, casting an electric shimmer that made the night feel alive and slightly dangerous. Ron, a 24-year-old electrical engineer with a meticulous mind, walked hand in hand with his girlfriend, Jen Yu, up the narrow corridor of her apartment building. It was a routine they had followed for months. Every night, he would escort her safely to her door. Despite the familiar faces in the lobby, there was an unspoken awareness of the city's darker corners. Shadows stretched long across the walls, and the hum of the elevator promised security, but also concealed uncertainty. Ron's eyes flicked to the ceiling, calculating the elevator's timing and the faint creak of its doors, a habit born of his cautious nature. For Ron, this simple walk was ordinary, but the night held an undercurrent of tension, the kind that makes one aware of how fragile safety can be in the pulse of a sprawling metropolis. The elevator in Jen Yu's apartment complex was a relic of another era. Metallic, creaking and ominously unstable. Ron pressed the button for the 13th floor, and the cage shuddered as it obeyed. The walls rattled like old bones, and the fluorescent light overhead flickered in irregular pulses. By the time they reached the 7th floor, the elevator lurched violently, halting mid-ride. Ron's heart skipped a beat as the doors hesitated, their edges scraping against the frame with an eerie, metallic screech. The air grew thick, heavy with a strange chemical smell that made his stomach turn. Then came the flames, first small, licking at the floor beneath their feet, then larger, scorching the edges of his shoes and crawling along his legs. The confined space magnified the heat and smoke, turning the elevator into a cage. Panic clawed at him, but Ron's mind raced. Every second stretched, every flicker of fire and spark threatening catastrophe. The suspense was palpable, the kind that grips the chest and makes time both slow and sharp. One wrong move could mean disaster, and yet instinct and training nudged him forward, calculating each step in the face of imminent danger. Panic surged like a tidal wave, drowning fear in pure instinct. Ron's hands found the metal edges of the emergency hatch above, and without hesitation he hauled himself upward. Flames licked the walls, smoke burned his lungs, but every nerve screamed to survive. He emerged onto the narrow roof of the elevator car, singed and scorched but alive. The fire below raged, devouring the ancient machinery. Yet he clung to the metal platform, heart hammering, every muscle trembling from adrenaline and shock. Down below, Jen Yu's eyes widened in horror. The elevator doors refused to open, wedged tight as smoke curled into the hallway. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the fire department, voice quivering with urgency. Moments later, firefighters arrived, a chaotic scene unfolding before them. Smoke poured from the elevator shaft, and the gleam of blood on metal hinted at the violence within. Ron, battered and scorched, clung to the elevator roof, a lone figure caught between disaster and salvation. The shocking truth cut sharper than any blade. Haron had not survived. The man who had struggled through flames, fought panic and climbed for his life, was already dead. Investigation revealed the unimaginable. Liu W. Zhang, a mutual friend driven by jealousy, had meticulously plotted the attack. The malfunctioning elevator, the fire, the blood, it was all staged. He had stabbed Haron earlier and set the fire to disguise his crime. The carefully constructed illusion of survival only deepened the horror. Justice came swiftly yet coldly. Liu W. Zhang confessed, and the court sentenced him to life in prison, a life of isolation to match the one he had stolen from Haron. In the quiet aftermath, the story lingered like smoke. Betrayal can hide behind familiarity. Obsession can wear the mask of friendship. What seemed routine, a simple elevator ride, harbored a tragedy as intricate as it was devastating. Life sometimes cloaks darkness in the ordinary, and the most unsuspecting moments can conceal the sharpest knives. Madrid, February 1966. The city hummed with winter chill, streetlights casting long shadows over cobblestone streets. In a dimly lit basement cafe, José Luis Peña leaned across a worn wooden table, animated, his eyes sparkling with a mix of curiosity and mischief. Across from him sat Fernando Sesma, his longtime friend and confidant, equally intrigued by the unusual. They were not alone. Around them gathered members of Belena Allegri, a fledgling UFO and alien enthusiast club. Maps, sketches, and articles littered the table, hinting at strange sightings, otherworldly encounters, and tales that teetered on the edge of belief. The air buzzed with excitement, the kind reserved for those who see the ordinary world as just the surface of something far stranger. Here, in this quiet corner of Madrid, two friends were about to embark on a story that would blur the lines between curiosity, deception, and sheer human audacity. Fernando Sesma slid a folded piece of paper across the table. José Luis picked it up, noting the crisp typewritten lines and the strange looping symbol at the top. "These came from the Umites," Fernando said, his voice low but brimming with certainty. "An alien race. They're trying to communicate with us." José Luis raised an eyebrow, skeptical. He glanced around the room. The other club members leaned forward, eyes wide, hanging on every word, every symbol, every stroke of typewriter ink. Their excitement was palpable, almost contagious, but José Luis couldn't shake the feeling that something about this was too neat, too convenient. The letter contained cryptic instructions and references to distant worlds, written in a language that seemed both foreign and eerily systematic. There was no return address, no signature, just the looping symbol, repeated at the bottom as if to seal the message's authenticity. As he read, José Luis felt a mix of wonder and doubt. The possibilities were exhilarating, yet a nagging suspicion whispered at the edges of his mind. Was this a genuine encounter or a carefully orchestrated ruse? In the months that followed, the Umite's presence seemed to expand almost overnight. Letters arrived weekly, each stamped with that same looping symbol, typed in the exact meticulous script. José Luis watched as Fernando's enthusiasm deepened, and with it, the fervor of the entire club. Soon, the story leapt from basement cafes into the public eye. Newspapers carried grainy photographs of unidentified flying objects hovering over Spanish skylines, each image subtly marked with the same strange symbol from the letters. Headlines oscillated between awe and alarm, capturing the imagination of a nation already hungry for the extraordinary. People whispered in the streets, speculated in cafes, and debated in classrooms. Some feared an imminent visitation. Others declared the oddities a benevolent force, guiding humanity from afar. Panic and fascination mingled in equal measure, creating a cultural fever that no one could ignore. José Luis, ever the skeptic, found himself caught between incredulity and wonder. The world outside seemed to take the letters seriously, but in his mind, a question gnawed quietly. Were these messages truly from another world? Or had someone mastered the art of deception with uncanny precision? As the oddities' messages proliferated, the impact rippled far beyond the club's basement meetings. Entire groups began forming around the supposed alien guidance, some embracing it with near-religious fervor. What started as curiosity soon twisted into obsession. Tragic headlines followed, suicides, ritualistic acts, and even murders were linked to misguided devotion to the oddities. José Luis found himself increasingly alone, a voice of reason, drowned out by the chaos he had only glimpsed at first. He tried to warn the public, to temper the hysteria with caution and skepticism, but his cautions fell on deaf ears. Friends distanced themselves. The club grew more insular, more fervent. The oddities had become a cultural phenomenon beyond anyone's control. Spain was captivated, fearful, and enthralled all at once. And José Luis, once a curious observer, was now a reluctant witness to the consequences of humanity's hunger for the extraordinary. 3 decades after the oddities first appeared, in 1996, José Luis Peña stepped forward publicly. In a candid confession, he admitted that the letters, the symbols, even the photograph of the UFO had been entirely fabricated. His intent, he explained, was an experimental critique, a way to expose humanity's eagerness to believe without question. Yet even with the truth unveiled, the myth refused to die. Stories of the oddities continued to circulate, whispered in UFO circles and online forums. Fernando Sesma, José Luis's old friend and accomplice, had passed away still believing in the alien messages, leaving a haunting testament to the persistence of human credulity. The oddity hoax was more than a clever deception. It was a mirror reflecting the power of belief, the sway of manipulation, and the contagiousness of collective fascination. José Luis's experiment revealed uncomfortable truths about human psychology, how easily hope, fear, or curiosity can override skepticism, and how the extraordinary once imagined can take on a life of its own, from Captain Felby's miraculous survival and poetic twist of fate, to Haron's tragic betrayal in a routine elevator ride, and finally to the oddities' manufactured extraterrestrial saga. These stories illuminate the curious ways truth can defy expectation. Life-saving coincidences, deadly obsessions, and mass deceptions each remind us that reality often surpasses imagination. Sometimes, indeed, truth is stranger than fiction, and when it is, it lingers, haunting, humbling, and impossible to forget.